0, 1, 2, 3. Let's get started.
Holy
So how you guys
smokes.
doing?
We're doing well. We're doing
Good.
really well. Thanks for
Good,
joining
good,
us.
good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what we
So,
wanted to do was really, you know, building houses shouldn't be a mystery.
right.
And certainly it's a it's an effort for sure. It's a little more difficult than just buying an existing house at face value, right? But
Right.
of course, if you're buying an existing house today, a lot of times it's a premium for the house, and also you got to do a renovation. So maybe it's not so much easier. But we certainly want to try to do our best to take the mystery out of home building,
Hmm.
try to make it as clear as possible for people, answer as many questions as we can, and then the mod, being modular, it might be a little bit more of a mystery. What is a modular home, all that kind of thing. But
Right.
a big component of building a house is the financing aspect of it.
Hmm.
And so we wanted to chat with you for a variety of reasons, not least of which is you've got tremendous amount of experience in the finance side of residential lending, and so we just wanted to have a quick conversation about your experience, what you see in the market, sort of broader market, more specific to Western New York as well, and in New York in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're kicking off now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
Perfect.
yourself and how you got in the business, how long you've been in the business, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with you guys, and I can tell you that I've been in this business for a very long time. I started back in the 80s. I don't know if
I
you
was
guys
born a
were
couple
even
years ago,
born then,
actually.
but back in the 80s as a
I,
real
I was
estate
just a
agent.
I was just a concept.
It was a concept. You were just a concept. So I started back in the 80s as a real estate agent. I became a broker in the later 80s. And then in the early 90s, I joined a company called Spectrum Home Mortgage at that time. And Spectrum Home Mortgage was the premier independent mortgage banker in the marketplace. And they were subsequently bought out by HSBC. So I worked for HSBC, and then I went from HSBC. I was recruited over to M&T for a few years, from like 97 to 2002, and then I went from M&T being recruited to Charter One, which became Citizens Bank. I was there for 20 years. And then I left about 3 years ago, and I joined U.S. Bank, and it's been a great ride. U.S. Bank's the fifth largest bank in the country, about a $670 billion bank, and we can lend anywhere in the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii. But we have some pretty nice products that fit the criterias or the mold, if you will, for people looking to build. We have lot loans, we have a build loan, we have loans that accommodate both modular and stick built, which, to me, I had a modular home for many years and left it after almost 30 years. But um, it's been a good ride. I could tell you right now, I'm probably myself doing more construction loans than I am regular purchases because of the inventory. And so, finding different ways to help people find homes, the opportunity to build. Certainly, if you have the ability, we'll give you uh, the financing, or we'll allow you to finance the lot with the intent to build, or we can do it simultaneously where you get the building lot and the construction loan at the same time. So there's quite a few things out there. That will help somebody looking and can't find, let's say, their dream home, to just allow them to build. And you'd be surprised how not too far off from buying an existing home is to building your own home. And there's a big myth out there.
We'll talk a little bit about percentage down requirement and stuff like that, but I think you touched on something that's important, which is, indirectly, which is, when should someone reach out to talk to you about, lending?
So
Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because we always, sometimes we get inquiries from people, years before they're ready to build. Sometimes not.
yeah,
Sometimes it's closer too. But at any stage, when we talk to somebody and provide them with a quote for whatever it is they're interested in building, one of our first to-do items for the person is, hey, have you chatted with a bank? Because that's really what makes it real in terms of your budget, what you can afford, the outline for not only your overall project, but really the breakdown between, your down payment, and then your monthly payment, and all these kinds of things. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
sure. So, it's never too early, as far as I'm concerned, to inquire about purchasing. The last thing you want to do is either find a place or fall in love with your dream home and then realize that, I can't do it right now. That's disappointment right away. The goal is to plan, just like anything else. You're going to plan. I've had people reach out to me a year in advance, a year and a half, 2 years down the line. What do I do, and what do I need to do to get me to a position where I need to purchase? Um, it's interesting because everyone has an uncle or an aunt or somebody who knows real estate because they bought a house 30 years ago. And so I could tell you that that advice is probably stale. So it's always good to reach out to a professional and get the answer. So my goal is to sit down with someone, and I actually prefer it. I sit down to meet, I like meeting with people very early on. So we come up with a game plan, nothing surprising. um, I tell people all the time, I don't know the first thing about your business. I don't expect you to know the first thing about mine. And so don't feel like any question is silly. I remember years ago, I met with this attorney, very successful, and this was probably 25, almost 30 years ago. I go in his office and he had this huge whiteboard on his wall, and he's, you could tell he was a high powered guy. And he got off the phone and he looks at me and he goes, Ed, he says, I'm a lawyer. I know law. He goes, I know nothing about mortgages. I need you to talk to me like I'm 10. And I've never forgotten that. It's something where you're doing that because that's how people learn. I'm not going to assume that people know everything. So for me to get somebody early on and help them kind of game plan down the line. There are folks that are ready today and don't know it, but if you're not, at least you're coming up with an idea and all right, what's it going to cost me? How much can I afford? What's my credit look like? All these things are really important factors. And the reality is, nobody's going to show you a house or nobody's going to build you a house without you going through this process and making sure that we're going to be able to put you into a mortgage to be able to finalize the project. Um, when it comes to financing on a traditional home, we're probably looking at, when I say traditional, I mean, traditional financing, we can get you into a property with, 3% down, 5% down. When it
Just
comes
to
to
be clear, when you're
construction,
saying
yeah,
traditional, you're saying buying an existing home.
existing
Just so we're
home,
clear on the
exactly. Yeah,
words
yeah,
we're
yeah.
using. Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's correct. Yep.
Yep.
And
Versus new construction. So three,
versus new
5%
construction.
down versus new
That's right.
construction. What's the down payment requirements typically you're
So
seeing?
yeah, the minimum requirement is going to be about 10%. Well, not about,
Okay.
it will be 10%.
Okay.
Um, and so if somebody buys a lot, let's say they buy it ahead of time, they purchase a lot today and, they pay cash for it or they finance it. That value of the lot and their equity into that lot will be their monies or their funds into the transaction when we're ready to move forward. So,
Yeah.
let's say if somebody builds a lot today or buys a lot and they pay cash, let's say it's 20 grand. 2 years from now they're looking to build and it's worth 30. Now they have $30,000 worth of equity into the
Yeah.
transaction. So it helps
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
kind of plan for that.
Just to be
So
clear, so because this is a good point, just to camp on for a second. Well,
yeah,
so if the overall project is $500,000 for the construction of the house, improvements to the lot, and the lot value, the overall appraised value of the project is $500,000,
Hmm.
and they are gifted the land from their parents, which happens quite frequently, which is a
Yep,
wonderful thing if
sure
that's
it
at all
is.
in your available to you. It's a wonderful thing. They gift that to you. You don't pay anything for that lot, but that lot is worth $50,000, just using round numbers. fifty
Hmm.
thousand dollars is 10% of a $500,000 project. That lot then now covers your down payment for the construction loan, or your money requirement to come to the table for your construction loan. Is it just using generalizations, round numbers? That's consistent of what we're talking about here, correct, Ed?
That's exactly correct. And so your equity or your down payment into the property is covered with that lot. And then all you would have to come up with then would be your closing costs. And your closing costs are based off of the amount of the loan. But for the most part, yes,
That's
your
great. Ed,
well,
Ed,
your
I have a
scenario
question
there is
for you related to
absolutely right
kind
on
of
point.
some
Okay.
initial inquiries that
Yeah,
we get. We
yeah.
get a lot of people, as you'd probably guess, that say, "Hey, I'm looking at existing homes. I can't find anything. I'm considering the idea of building. I already got approved for a mortgage." I get that comment a lot. I've already gotten
Hmm.
approved for a mortgage. What's the similarity or
Right.
correlation that you see between what somebody's going to get approved for a mortgage versus a new construction project? Because it's not the same kind of a loan. So, how similar is that
That's a
approval amount?
that's correct. Yeah. Really good question. So there are a couple things to look at here. So you got somebody comes in and says, I've already gotten approved for a mortgage.
Mm,
Okay. It depends on what kind of mortgage they got approved for. A construction loan is typically going to be a portfolio loan product. That means that that particular mortgage is developed and is sold, if you will, to a consumer. Um, and it's proprietary to a lender. So, for instance, our construction loan product is our portfolio loan product. We've come up with it. The programs, the parameters, the credit scores, all that are based off of our what
mm,
we've seen in the industry over the past so many years. So we'll adjust things where somebody can qualify for an FHA loan with 3.5% down with a lower credit score requirement. It may not necessarily match the criteria of a construction loan. It's a good start, but it's always important to still figure out and find out whether or not the construction loan is something you qualify for. So it's not a blanket approval. Being approved for a mortgage doesn't necessarily mean it
mm.
applies to all mortgage products that are out there. We just kind of have to review and make sure that you fit into the mortgage product of a construction loan. That's all.
It's a good point to make, because a lot of times we'll have inquiries from people who say, "Hey, I'm working with a real estate agent, and I've been approved for X amount of dollars." And the assumption is, of course, you're looking at existing houses, so that's going to be an existing traditional home loan that you've been approved for. So we always follow up with, "Hey, let's make sure we clarify, what your budget is on a new construction home," which it might change a little bit depending on what you're planning on putting down. In some
Hmm.
cases, it could preclude you from new construction at this particular time, or maybe just revise the plan and the game plan for you, or your timeline outlook for when you potentially could be in a position to build. It's important to get that stuff squared away early on in the process, just because people ask for quotes, and we're happy to give quotes, and it's not a problem. We don't try to be mysterious about our pricing,
Right.
but we want to make sure that we're making good use of everybody's time, and we're looking at uh, the products or the house options that are in line with whatever it is your overall budget might
Yep.
be. And so
Yep.
that's kind of an important thing.
And I look at it every time I meet with somebody. We're starting out with a fact finding mission. I met with a young couple 2 days ago. I would say 3 days ago, and we started the process discussing some things. I sent them an application. while I send them the application, they went out and started looking for homes. And I'm like, well, this is not how this should work. You shouldn't, again, don't put yourself in a position where you're going to go out there and find something that you're not going to be able to get. You're going to get discouraged. Just let's go through the process. Let's vet it. Let's vet all the information, and then be in a position where you have something in your hand that says, all right, Jeremy, Jonathan, I met with Ed. I'm good to go for this number. What can we get into? And so I'd rather see somebody in that position than to be in the position where they fall in love with something but they can't get it. But at least they're going to know what it's going to take them to get there. I get that, but you don't want to do it backwards.
Yeah, I mean, we say
Start
that
the
all the
process
time with,
early.
with new construction is, getting a quote early on is extremely helpful so that you know what's realistic for you. If you're looking at houses that are 500 and, your budget is really only 200,
Hmm.
you should have gotten that order correct so you don't get ahead of yourself and
Right.
get excited about something that's not realistic for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Right. Exactly, and again, affordability is that piece is also a question that's more, you know, it's happened many times where I'll qualify someone and get them pre-approved, and
yeah,
they may be approved for more than they really want to spend, and so it's really a matter of kind of working backwards into your budget. And if you feel, think about it. If you're buying an existing home and you're spending, you're not necessarily at the top end of your budget, but then if you buy a brand new home, your maintenance costs will be less for the first 10 years or so. You don't have to worry, hopefully, knock on wood. You don't have to worry too much about some ancillary costs other than just regular maintenance and keeping the house up. But the overall repairs and things of that nature, there's a lot of benefits to the new home that you got to factor into your thoughts when you're shopping.
We don't do renovations, but just from the products that you offer,
Hmm.
plug for yourselves. Do you do
Yeah,
renovation loans, or do you
we
do
do.
loans where if they buy an existing house, there's some facility there for them to put a new roof on, or replace the furnace, replace the kitchen? Maybe you just
Yeah,
want to talk a little bit
yeah.
about that just from a U.S. bank perspective.
So yeah, it's a great question because our construction loan is also a renovation loan. And the only difference, though, between that and maybe some other programs that are out there, is that our minimum renovation amount is going to be about 100,000, because the cost really aren't going to make sense to do it less than that because of the cost of just the mortgage itself, filing, things of that nature. So we will do $100,000 or more. So if you buy a house, we're typically talking, a pretty substantial renovation in most cases, but it puts you in a position where, you found a house with good bones, and now you're just making sure the mechanics, maybe a new kitchen, a couple new bathrooms, things of that nature factor in. But the rehab loan is very similar to the construction loan in that you get a specific time to build. So let me just backtrack a little bit. A construction loan for us basically gives you the ability to purchase a home and or purchase a new build, having it built for yourself. The first 12 months, 15, 18, or 24 months, we will do as interest only. So when you close on your mortgage, the construction loan rate that you have when you close is going to be your rate forever because our construction loan is called construction to permanent. So it means that it starts as a construction loan. After the construction phase is complete, it turns into a permanent mortgage. The construction phase can be 12 months, 15, 18, or 24, which means you have interest only payments during that time frame. And the interest only payments are based off of any funds that are dispersed during the process. So if you close the first month and there are no draws, there's no payment on your construction loan. Second month you close, after you close, the builder needs funds for whatever it might be. Let's say foundation, things of that nature. Let's say it's 50 grand, 60 grand. You're going to pay interest only on that 50 or 60 grand that second month. And then that just continues as the builder takes draws. Um, so the goal here is to kind of just game plan again. You come in, we figure out what your what amount you can qualify for, what comfort level you're at, and then the next step would be to go to you guys and kind of take a look at some homes and some designs and kind of hone in on a property that fits your guidelines,
I was
and then
wondering
we
if we
take it from there.
could talk a little bit about something that's come up for us quite a bit in the fact that we tend to often build further out from the suburbs, so in more rural areas and that, and the
Mhm.
cost of homes in those areas tends to be different than it is in the suburbs and in the city and that sorts of things. And so we've had plenty of times where somebody might be able to afford a particular, dollar value for a home, but can run into an issue with it just not really making sense for them to do it in the area that they're trying to build based off of what homes are worth in those areas. And that, what have you guys seen in terms of that with both single family homes and also multifamily? Because that's a whole other element of that as well, for people that are looking to get a loan for those things.
Right. So, it's interesting. Our market's very unique in that it's really no big deal for folks. We lend all over the country. I do a lot of loans in Florida. I'll do loans in downstate New York. I'll do loans in Colorado. It's not unusual for someone to be an hour outside of the city, 45 minutes outside of the city. We're used to pulling up and parking out in front of our offices and then getting on the thruway and or the 33 and being home in 15 20 minutes
Or
unless there's a
snow.
car
Yeah.
car
Yeah.
accident or something holding up traffic or snow. So, it's a really good point, and I bring this up to folks all the time because the further you go out, the property, there might be more property available. Not might be, there is. And so, the opportunities get better for you and the affordability may also get better. However, that's not going to stay that way for long because as time goes on, more people are going to spread out more. They're going to get the word. They're going to buy more property. So that line, if you will, of how far out um, is too far out will begin to shorten because we're definitely going to be in a position where it's not the same. It's not the same as it used to be. Our market is changing. Our the vicinity in the areas that we were looking at that were hot before are almost untouchable sometimes now for first time home buyers or even for move up buyers. So you have to find opportunities, and that's one of the ways is to put yourself in a position where you know mentally you got to say, okay, I'm going to move 30 minutes outside of the city. I'm going to move 40 minutes out because the affordability factor may be there for you because of that. And I think that's a smart way to do it. Um, and down the line, and here's another thing too. We're finding that more and more folks are doing that. And so what I have found, I just did some pretty good sized properties. Two of them I have in process now. Um, they were pretty substantial in price, and we actually went outside of the typical um, comparable area for the appraisals to find a comparable, and it was not unusual for the appraisers to go 3, 4, 5 miles away or further to find a comparable to make that deal work because we are finding that people are building further out
Sure,
in the
sure.
suburbs,
Jeremy,
in the
what's
rural
what's
suburbs,
uh
if you
what's
will.
been your experience with that in terms
There.
of as you engage with homeowners for building more rural and the justification for spending on a new build versus the cost of existing homes and how people have chosen to justify those things or not.
Well, I think when you're comparing building new
Right.
versus buying existing, it's important to compare apples to apples. That's the first thing, And so a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I don't want to spend on a new build; it's too expensive. I can get, this house or this is the price target I'm looking at for existing homes." And that's fine. I mean, the price of an existing home is largely based on the area and the condition of the home. Those are the two deciding factors or impacting factors on the price of an existing home. And so if it's an area that has appreciated, the price will be more. If it's an area that's depreciated, the price is going to be less, combined with the condition of the property itself. But it's just important to compare apples to apples. Is the house outdated? Do you have to do renovations, or is it not? Is it in great shape and you don't need to do anything to it? Versus a new home, which you can design however you want, and you get everything at day one on its life cycle. So that's just important to compare those two. In terms of the cost in a rural area or something like that, rural by definition is there's less properties. And so when you're doing market evaluation or appraisal comparisons, you typically like Ed mentioned, you typically have to go have a broader radius in order to pick up comparables, and that's just all normal stuff. That's just all normal stuff. I mean, usually when people are going into a rural area, it's generally not an area they're unfamiliar with. It's an area that they're familiar with from growing up or from knowing where they want to be based on location and proximity to work and these kinds of things, or an area that they're considering in order to put down roots to grow a family, things of that nature. And ultimately, like anything, it's a personal decision that's got to make sense for you and your overall game plan for your life. Just like when we're designing a house, we don't want to design a house. We don't want to design a house and impose that design on somebody else. We want to understand early on what it is that you're trying to achieve out of your home, and understand sort of the key components of the design that you're looking to see come to fruition. And we want to add value to that process, and we want to catch your vision and add value to that overall design plan and scheme, so that what you're envisioning, we try to achieve. And is just like buying an existing house, designing a house. If you can get 6, 7 out of 10 core requirements, that's pretty well everything. And also, I mean, I think there's really only a few ways to design a 1,800 square foot 3-bedroom 2-bath. I mean, there's really
Yeah.
3 or 4 main ways that you can shuffle rooms around, and that's really what it comes down to, is space allocation and movement flow throughout the house. And just like John and I were, you and I were on a call not too long ago with someone who it was sort of said, well, this is not really what I'm looking for. I said, oh, well, maybe we're looking at the wrong plan to start with. And she described what she wanted. Really, what I want is I want the common space all at the back, all together. I said, oh, well, there's basically 2 plans that allow for that within this square footage range. And we looked at both plans. Shit, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Well, let's start with that plan, and then from there, sure, we can make some modifications and add some square footage here or there, or move things around, customize the kitchen and that kind of thing, customize the window layout, these sorts of things. But to start with a good to start with a plan that's a good starting point that achieves most of what you're looking for. That's usually how we recommend designing a custom home. Starting from a napkin normally isn't just productive from a time perspective, because there's things that have been thought of by engineers that we haven't. And so even when I'm building a house for myself, I typically start with a plan that is pretty close or at least on the direction that I want to head with the design, and then we'll tweak it from there. And so we do that a lot of times, even with people who come in and said, "Hey, I've had this." What happens a lot is people could say, "I've had this design to be a stick-built house, but then I've got the stick-built numbers, and so I'm calling you for a modular quote." And I
Mm-hmm.
say, "Happy to quote it for you, as long as you're okay with some adjustments to the floor plan in order to comprise with the
Accommodate.
modular engineering requirements."
Right.
And I can go over what that might look like, and so but that's what I would say. I
No,
don't
that was
know if I
exactly
think I
what I
got off
asked.
track from
That's
your
exactly
original
what I
question
asked.
there,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah. So,
I went
so
down a rabbit hole there of
a second
design.
part to that question is, so let's say it's a 1,700 square foot home, and regardless of where you're building it, is it going to cost you the same to build that in a really rural area or someplace that's just outside of the city? Are the costs, is it still going to be the same number, or are there some factors that are going to come in that will change the numbers a little bit?
I mean, that's a great point, because I think that's really where modular earns its keep, is in rural areas, because the offsite construction, outside of some, we want to nail down the cost for shipping and stuff. That might change a little bit, but the general cost is going to be locked in for the offsite construction portion of it. And then, of course, before we move into a contract to actually construct the house and close on your mortgage, we're going to want to nail down the other ancillary costs that are associated to the project. So that's going to be your local excavator, your local electrician, your local HVAC and plumber. Those contractors can those prices can range a little bit depending on whether you're in Watkins Glen, or whether you're in the Adirondacks, or whether you're in Kingston or the Hudson Valley. And
Mm-hmm.
those are typically, impacted just based on, market conditions. That's market demands on supply and demand for labor typically in those areas. And so those might change a little bit, but part of our process is we'll go through the job scope requirements for the on-site portion of the build, nail those down with your local contractors, make sure those trades are lined up, so that when we're ready to submit everything to Ed to close the loan with US Bank, you've got a full and complete budget that you can close a loan on.
So, and the other thing is utilities, correct?
Well,
Uh,
that's a part of that on-site portion of the,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
the excavator is going to do your site development, your driveway, your excavation, your stone, all that kind of stuff. And your electrician, HVAC and plumber, those guys are going to run
Right.
your electric in from your pole into your house, and that's going to be dictated by how far back your house is from the street, from the
Mm-hmm.
electric pole, all these kinds of things. But those are the two key components for site costs, are going to be
Right.
your excavator and your electrician, because your excavator is going to do, they'll do the dig, they'll do all the prep for the foundation, and that's going to be based on your distance from the service road, municipal road, to your house. And then they're going to do all the other stuff. The excavator typically does the most on the job. They'll
Right.
then do your septic if you need a septic, and they'll do your water line to the street. If
Yeah.
if you're serviced by a well, then obviously we need a well contractor to come and give us a quote, also, or as well.
That's perfect. I love
So,
good puns.
so when
Little
it
pun I
comes
did there for
to,
you, John. Thought you
yeah,
like that.
so when it
Well,
comes
dad
to
joke.
construction, when it
We
comes
have
to
very little as
construction,
dads. We need the jokes, right?
trust me, I've got some that my kids are tired of hearing. So, which they pop up
That's
every
right.
day,
That's right.
and
I have
I'm
to
the
remind
funniest guy
Jeremy
on
that
earth.
all the
Just ask
time.
me. So, yeah.
Hey,
So,
you've got a coffee mug that says just
I'm always
that, so
reminding
that's a
Jeremy how
fact.
funny I
It's a
am. Yeah.
scientific
yeah,
fact.
exactly. So when you're, oh yes,
That's right.
I don't have to. I just say something and people laugh. So, but for the most part, really quick, I wanted to touch on is the difference in draws. So when you do a construction loan with us, you're basically doing a construction loan, which means that you are getting financing to finance the construction. The difference between the construction loan draw for a stick built and a construction loan draw for a modular home can be, 2 to 3 draws in some cases. So on the modular home, traditionally we'll work with about 3 draws. That means that you get to a certain phase, we provide X amount of dollars that you've taken out to the contractor to get this done. Once you meet the next phase, once you pass that phase, typically the property gets delivered, and you guys can tell us more about that. But so the actual draw process is a little different, and in some cases much quicker than a draw for a stick built. And so, those things are important, especially if you're looking to do something during the winter months. You're trying to get in, the property covered quickly. Also, the fact that the property's engineered in a climate controlled type situation as opposed to, having to stick build it and rushing to get a nail in because it's 15 degrees or 12 degrees out. And, you know, we know they use guns now, not necessarily the natural guns. But for the most part, how does that work as far as timing is? Because to me that's a positive with
Yeah, I
that.
mean it's for sure it's less draws on the
Hmm.
construction draw schedule with the bank,
Yeah.
and really the number of draws and the draw schedule is something that uh, we would formulate in conjunction with the bank requirements and
Hmm.
also with the customer requirements and what the site contractors are going to need for funding in the project. And a lot of times, like you say, you can complete the whole thing with 3 or 4 draws. Sometimes it might be 5 or 6. It really just depends on the location and the contractors that are involved in that particular project. But that's something that we would, that's why it's helpful to have it's important for early on for us to understand, we're all on the same team. The bank,
Right.
the customer, the builder, we all want to achieve the same result, which is a successful building project, and make sure, the contractors are taken care of in a timely manner, and the contractors take care of the customers in a timely manner. And so it's a package deal. So it's good to
Hmm.
have a good team in place, for your new construction project, and make sure you're happy with the bank structure for the draw, happy with the builder, and happy with the subcontractors on the job who are going to do a lot of the site works as well for the project.
Totally agree. And again, we're talking about a lot of things today, and it while it sounds like a lot, that's what we're here for, is to support. That's what I'm here. It's to support a customer through the process of financing. You're there to support them through the process of building. So, it's not a discouraging thing. It's actually should be exciting, and as long as just heed the advice of the professionals, things should go pretty smoothly and well. Of course, the minute I say that, we get a huge snowstorm and puts us behind the 8 ball, and next we're being proven wrong. But for the most part, again, I think it's really important to understand. And again, you don't need to understand as a customer the whole process from start to finish, but just know that you have professionals that are
Yeah, yeah,
available
that's
to
right.
you to help you go through this process.
Well, John has a good analogy of building, and what's
Well,
that with that sort of
I'd
about
love to
party
get
planning, John?
SNL's permission to use the sketch. There's a sketch. Kristen Wiig does um, uh, where they're planning a surprise party. Yeah, they're planning a surprise party,
The nervous person,
and
right? That's right.
she just
That's right.
cannot
That's
handle
hilarious.
like
Yeah.
thinking about any aspect of it. She's just overwhelmed with the nerve excitement. At one point in time, she jumps
Yeah.
through the window. She's so excited
Right.
and stuff. But my is, if you can plan a surprise party and think about, the different people that need to be involved with it, planning,
Right.
this person needs to be here at this time, and we're going to park our cars
Right.
over here, and I need a balloon animal person, and I need to build a cake. You don't need to know how to build a football helmet out of balloons. You just need somebody who does, right? So maybe they
Right.
explain it to you and you learn
Right.
something, but
Right.
chances are you're probably going to forget
Yep.
it after they're done anyway. But the key is, having those relationships and hiring
Exactly.
people that are going to be competent and can handle doing these different things for the project. So, yeah, exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
For
for
sure.
me at
For
least,
sure.
I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts if there was something different. I mean, my key takeaways on this is understanding that there are differences in the approval process and on what you would be approved for a mortgage versus a construction loan. Understanding those things, understanding some of the fact that if you don't have conversations with your lender or with your builder, then you're going to kind of be left to figure it out for yourself, which is a lot of work. So have the conversations and figure them out early on, and just understanding that the differences between building and existing for rural areas versus the suburbs and things like that, and what those differences are and what makes sense for you and for your project. So, anything that I missed, you guys? I mean, I'm sure we talked about other things, but those were
Yep.
kind of my key takeaways.
Yeah, I will also add from a lending perspective. So a construction loan is a very unique product, and there are only a few lenders that actually have a true one close construction loan. We're one of them. And so there are times where there could be a construction loan that's considered a two close, which means
Right.
there's a construction phase and you close on that, and then there's another loan that you close on. Certainly, that's going to cost you a little more
Yeah, because it
because
rolls
of the
it
two
when it turns
closings,
over
because
into
you
the
have two
mortgage,
sets
then
of
it's another
closing costs.
closing, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Ours is exactly, exactly. Ours is truly a one close construction loan, and so it's important to understand that. And that's also different because people. There are times when you hear terminology and not quite understand it. That's also different than an end loan construction, which means that the project is being managed and paid for by a corporation or a company that's building the project, and then we come in
Mm.
at the end. That's not what I'm talking about here. We're talking about a true construction loan where the financing is set up for the borrower to complete the transaction on the house with disbursements as the house progresses, and we will only pay disbursements as work is completed. We will
Sure.
not pay for work that ahead of time, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to be
That's great.
clear on the construction loan
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. Well, if there's anything that we missed, I'm sure happy to see any comments, questions. Funny
Pleasure.
comments are always given two thumbs up,
Yeah,
and we can follow up with anything that we might have
Thanks, you guys.
missed.
Appreciate it.
sounds good to me.
All right, guys. Well, I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
guys. It's a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks. Have a great day. Thanks for your time, Ed.